The silence was the first thing that hit me, a heavy, unnatural void where the low hum of vintage electronics should have been. I stood in the doorway of our shared studio. The one Max, our older brother, had painstakingly soundproofed with scavenged acoustic panels and boundless optimism before. The late Tuesday morning sun, usually a welcome guest, cast a stark, unforgiving light through the single grimy window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stillness. It was the kind of quiet that screamed. My gaze swept the familiar creative chaos. My keyboard workstation neatly organized on one side, Chloe's jumble of effects pedals and looping stations spilling across the other. Then my eyes landed on the far wall, on the custom-built stand Max had welded himself. Empty. An icy fist clenched around my heart. Helios was gone. Helios, Max's heavily modified Moog synthesizer, wasn't just an instrument. It was his soul distilled into circuits and wires, the sonic cornerstone of Starlight Echo, the band Chloe and I had formed to keep his music, his dreams, alive. Its distinctive, warm, ethereal sound was woven into every note we'd ever recorded, every hope we'd pinned on the upcoming demo session for Nova Records. This was it, our big break, the one Max had always said was just around the corner for us. My breath hitched. "No," I whispered, the word a wisp in the suffocating silence. I stumbled forward, running my hand over the cool, empty space on the stand, a phantom limb where Helios should have been. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw its way up my throat. There was only one person who had a key besides me. My fingers, numb and trembling, fumbled for my phone. I scrolled to Chloe's name, my thumb hovering over the call button. This couldn't be. She wouldn't. Not Helios. The line crackled, and then Chloe's voice, painfully bright and thumping with the distant beat of what sounded like festival music, chirped, "Hey, Ava. What's up? You sound weird." "Chloe," I managed, my voice tight, strangled. "Where is it? Where's Helios?" A slight, almost imperceptible pause on her end, long enough for the ice in my veins to spread. "Oh, Helios," she said, a little too airily. "Yeah, about that I sold it." The floor seemed to vanish. I leaned against the cold brick wall for support, the phone almost slipping from my grasp. You sold it. Are you out of your mind, Chloe?" "Ava, don't freak out," she said, a defensive sharpness creeping into her tone. I could almost see her tossing her newly magenta-streaked hair. "I got a fantastic price for it. Seriously, way more than I expected. Enough to get me to that exclusive music production workshop in Ibiza I told you about. You know, the one with Jackson Dane. This is a huge opportunity. Ava, for me to really, find my own sound, make some real industry connections." "Your own sound?" The words were incredulous, choked. Chloe, Helios was irreplaceable. Max poured years of his life into modifying it. Our demo for Nova Records, the one that's next week, the one that could change everything for Starlight Echo, that was our shared dream, built on his legacy. "Exactly. Our dream," she retorted, the festival music swelling as if to punctuate her point. "Maybe I'm tired of just being part of our dream. Maybe I want something that's just mine for a change. You're always going on about how Max would have wanted things, how we have to honor his vision. It's suffocating, Ava. I need space to grow, to be my own artist." "Space?" I could feel the tears, hot and angry, starting to well. "You call this space? Selling our brother's most prized possession, the very heart of our band, to fund a trip to some trendy workshop. He taught us everything we know on Helios. He built this studio for us with his own hands." "Oh, here we go," Chloe snapped, her voice hardening. "Stop trying to guilt-trip me with Max. He's gone, Ava. And frankly, you're just scared I'll actually make it without you micromanaging every single note, every single decision." The line clicked, followed by the dial tone's mocking hum. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the dusty floor, the phone clattering beside me. The silence of the studio pressed in, heavier than before, now filled with the screaming absence of Helios and the deafening roar of my sister's betrayal. The next few days were a blur of hollow-eyed sleeplessness and the acrid taste of fury. Every corner of the studio, every piece of shared equipment, seemed to whisper Max's name, then Chloe's. How could she? How could she sever a bond forged in shared grief and melody with such casual cruelty? I called Dad Robert. His voice, usually a comforting baritone, was laced with a weary sadness when I told him. "Ibiza. And she sold Helios to get there," he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of every fatherly disappointment. "Oh, Ava, Chloe, I don't understand that girl sometimes. She has so much talent, just like you, just like Max, but her impulsiveness, it's always been her Achilles heel." "She said she needed to find her own sound, Dad," I choked out, the words still tasting like ash. "She said I was holding her back." "Neither of you held Max back," he said gently. "He saw you both as his legacy, two sides of the same brilliant coin. He wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want his music, his memory, to be a wedge between you." His words, meant to soothe, only deepened the ache. Max had believed in us, in Starlight Echo. Chloe had just shattered that belief into a million glittering, painful pieces. By Friday, Chloe's Instagram feed was a vibrant, taunting travelogue. Chloe posing with a famous DJ, Chloe sipping cocktails by an infinity pool overlooking the Mediterranean, Chloe in a sleek recording booth, headphones on, eyes closed in feigned artistic ecstasy. The captions were even worse. "Music Maverick, #next big thing, Ibiza dreams, sorry not sorry." Each post was a digital slap in the face. The last one, a picture of her with an arrogant-looking guy she tagged as Ethan, both giving the camera smirks, sent a fresh wave of cold fury through me. My sadness began to curdle, hardening into a steely resolve. She wasn't just impulsive, she was cruel and flaunting it. She can't just dismantle everything we've built, everything Max stood for, and get away with it, I told Liam, our band's lawyer, the following Monday. Liam had been Max's friend before he was ours. A lanky, thoughtful guy who'd helped us navigate the murky waters of music contracts with a kindness that belied his sharp legal mind. We were in his downtown office, the city's impatient thrum a muted counterpoint to the turmoil in my chest. Liam steepled his fingers, his expression sympathetic but professional. "Legally, Ava, you're in a stronger position than you might think. When we set up the Starlight Echo partnership and the business account, you insisted on being the primary signatory and rights holder for the band's name and master recordings. We both remember why." I nodded grimly. It was after Chloe had, in a fit of pique over a canceled gig, impulsively spent their entire quarterly earnings from streaming and local shows on non-refundable tickets to a 3-day desert music festival for herself and a now-forgotten boyfriend, instead of paying their share of the studio rent. "So, what are our options?" I asked, leaning forward, the expensive leather of Liam's client chair feeling cold against my back. "We can freeze her access to any remaining band funds immediately," Liam stated, his gaze steady. "It's not a huge amount, but it will certainly curtail her Ibiza adventure. We can also issue a formal cease and desist if she attempts to use any Starlight Echo material, or even the band name, for any solo endeavors she might be planning with this Jackson Dane fellow." He paused. "As for Helios, tracing a unique vintage instrument like that, especially if it was sold privately for cash, will be difficult. But I have contacts in the specialized music equipment world. I can put out some discreet inquiries. No guarantees, though." A bitter taste filled my mouth. Freezing her out, threatening legal action, it felt drastic, almost as brutal as her own actions. But what choice did she leave me? "Do it," I said, my voice surprisingly firm. "All of it. I want her to understand that actions have consequences." Liam nodded slowly. "I'll draft the letter for the account freeze today. We can serve the cease and desist electronically once we have confirmation she's attempting to use band assets." He gave me a searching look. "Are you sure, Ava? This will likely escalate things significantly." "She escalated things when she stole our brother's synthesizer and sold it for a party," I replied, the words flat and cold. Later that day, sitting at my own kitchen table, I logged into the band's joint business account. My hand hovered over the button to restrict Chloe's access. A picture of us with Max, taken at his last birthday, smiled out from a frame on the counter. Max had his arms around us both, his grin wide and proud. With a deep, shuddering breath, I clicked the button. A small, almost insignificant digital action, yet it felt like severing a limb. The following evening, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Ava, honey," he said, his voice troubled. "I just got off the phone with Chloe. She was very distressed. Apparently, she tried to book some high-end studio time at a place in Ibiza, wanted to impress this Jackson Dane, and her band debit card was declined. Then her personal credit card, the supplementary one tied to the band account for emergencies, was also declined. A grim, unwelcome satisfaction flickered within me. So, the freeze was working. Was it now? I said, keeping my voice neutral. Ava, what's going on? Did you? I simply ensured that the music maverick understands the financial realities of embarking on a solo flight using shared resources she unilaterally decided to liquidate, I said, the carefully chosen words doing little to hide the bitterness. Just then, Chloe's name flashed on my call waiting, a beacon of incoming fury. Gotta go, Dad, I said quickly. Chloe's calling. I imagine she has a few things to say. I took a steadying breath and switched lines. Yes, Chloe? Ava, what in the actual hell did you do? She shrieked, her voice a torrent of indignation and panic. The faint thump of club music was gone, replaced by what sounded like street noise and her own ragged breathing. None of my cards are working. My access to the band account is completely blocked. I'm trying to pay for my room here and I can't. I'm stuck. Really? That must be terribly inconvenient, I replied, my voice like chipped ice. The image of her smug Ibiza posts flashed in my mind. Inconvenient? I could be thrown out on the street. You have to fix this. Right now, I need that studio time. Jackson was actually considering listening to some of my solo tracks. Funny how crashing the band's future has personal consequences, isn't it? I retorted, the cold anger giving my words a sharp edge. You wanted your own sound, Chloe. You wanted to make your own connections. It sounds like you're about to experience the true sound of silence from our shared resources. Perhaps Jackson Dane can cover your expenses if he's so impressed. You wouldn't, she sputtered. This isn't fair. Fair? I echoed, a harsh laugh escaping me. Was it fair when you ripped the heart out of our band and sold it for a glorified holiday, Chloe? Was it fair to Max? Was it fair to me? There was a choked sob on the other end, then a click. She'd hung up. I sank onto my sofa, the momentary triumph of her distress quickly fading, leaving behind a hollow ache. This wasn't a victory. It was just a deeper shade of broken. The next 24 hours were a digital onslaught. Chloe's texts morphed from indignant demands to tearful pleas, then to angry accusations, and finally to short, desperate messages that just said, Ava, please. I ignored them, my resolve a brittle shield against the guilt that was trying to seep in. Then Ethan called. His voice, stripped of its earlier poolside bravado, was tinny and anxious. Ava, man, you gotta do something. Chloe's a total wreck. She's been crying for hours. The hostel manager's threatening to call the police if she doesn't pay up by tonight. I can't help her. I'm flying out in the morning. This whole thing is way too much drama for me. So much for Ibiza romance and musical collaboration. He was just another enabler, jumping ship now that the party was over. She made her bed, Ethan, I said, my voice colder than I intended. She can figure out how to lie in it. But after I hung up, Dad's words about Max echoed in my ears. Max wouldn't have wanted this. Chloe's usually vibrant social media went ominously silent for a few hours, then a single, blurry photo appeared. A close-up of a tear-streaked face that was unmistakably hers, captioned with a single word. Lost. It was deleted within minutes, but the image seared itself into my mind. My anger, though still simmering, was being steadily eroded by a reluctant, familial ache. Robert called again that evening. Ava, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I know you're hurt. You have every right to be. What Chloe did was unconscionable. But she's your sister, honey. She's alone and she's scared. Don't let her completely self-destruct out there. Max loved you both more than anything. He wouldn't want this to be how his legacy plays out. He was right. Max, for all his artistic intensity, had always been the glue, the peacemaker, the one who could coax a grudging harmony from our often clashing personalities. The thought of him, his disappointment, was a heavy weight. Finally, later that night, Chloe called again. Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and broken. Ava, I messed up. So badly. I'm so sorry. What I did, it was horrible. Selfish, I was wrong. Please, I want to come home. The raw despair in her voice finally shattered the last of my icy resolve. This wasn't the defiant, party girl Chloe from Instagram. This was my little sister, lost and terrified. It's not that simple, Chloe, I said, my own voice softer now, weary. You didn't just mess up. You betrayed our trust, our music, Max's memory. You shattered everything. I know, she sobbed, the sound raw and painful. And I hate myself for it. Is there anything I can do? Anything at all to even begin to make it right? I took a deep, shaky breath. The anger was still there, a dull throb, but beneath it, something else stirred. A reluctant sense of responsibility, perhaps, or just the deeply ingrained instinct to protect a sibling, even one who had wounded you so profoundly. "If I help you get home," I said slowly, the words forming as I spoke, "there are conditions. Serious ones. This isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card." "Anything," she whispered, a desperate hope in her voice. "I'll do anything, Ava." "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "First, you get on the very next available flight home. No more Ibiza, no more workshops, no more excuses. You come straight back. Second, when you get here, you are going to actively help Liam and me try to recover Helios. That means every contact you made, every conversation you had about the sale, every single detail you remember. No holding back. Third, you and I are attending business management and financial counseling together. No arguments, no skipping sessions. You need to understand the real-world consequences of your financial decisions. And fourth," I paused, this one feeling almost as important as Helios itself, "you will issue a full, public apology on the Starlight Echo social media pages. To our fans, to the people who believed in us, explaining why the demo sessions were canceled and taking full responsibility for the uncertainty you caused." There was a long, shaky sigh on the other end of the line, followed by a watery, "Okay. Yes, all of it, I'll do it. Thank you, Ava, thank you." I wired her just enough money for a budget airline ticket, one way, no frills, and an airport shuttle, nothing more. A day later, a message appeared on the Starlight Echo Facebook page. It was surprisingly humble, deeply remorseful, and unequivocally took all the blame. It didn't excuse her actions, but it owned them. It was a small, flickering ember in the vast darkness of her betrayal, but it was something. Maybe, just maybe, it was a start. A few days after Chloe's subdued return, she'd slunk into the house looking pale, exhausted, and stripped of all her Ibiza bravado. Dad found me in Max's old room. I'd been slowly converting it into a small home office, but mostly I just sat in there, surrounded by his books, his old guitars, feeling the phantom limb of his presence. Robert leaned against the doorframe, a pensive look on his face. "You know," he began, his voice softer than usual, "Max used to say you two were like a complex chord. Ava, you were the root note, solid, foundational, always providing the structure. And Chloe," he smiled faintly, "Chloe was the wild, soaring seventh, sometimes dissonant, always unexpected, but the note that gave the chord its unique color, its tension and release." He paused, his gaze drifting to a framed photo of the three of them, laughing, on Max's beat-up Les Paul. "He worried sometimes that your different approaches would cause friction, but he always believed your sounds were meant to harmonize eventually, not just compete for the spotlight. He said the music you'd make together, truly together, would be something extraordinary." His words hung in the air, a poignant counterpoint to the ugly reality of our current discord. Later that evening, drawn by a faint, mournful melody I didn't recognize, I found Chloe in our studio. The place was still a mess, a testament to her hasty, ill-planned departure, but she was sitting on the floor amidst the clutter, Max's old lyric notebooks spread around her. She was hunched over his battered acoustic guitar, the one he'd written his first songs on, her fingers hesitantly picking out a fragile, searching tune. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red-rimmed and shadowed. She started, her voice barely a whisper, gesturing vaguely at the notebooks. "I was looking for, I don't know, him, I guess, trying to understand. I just wanted to feel like I was more than just Max's little sister playing his tunes, you know. Like I had something unique to offer, something that was purely mine. And you thought selling his most prized possession, the very heart of our band, the instrument he poured his soul into, was the way to prove that?" The question wasn't accusatory this time, just weary, tinged with a deep, aching sadness. She flinched, a fresh wave of shame washing over her face. "No," she whispered, looking down at her hands. "It was stupid, and selfish, and monumentally idiotic. I was just so desperate to be seen, to make some kind of mark, I convinced myself it was a bold artistic move instead of what it really was." She looked up at me, her gaze pleading. "A betrayal, of him, of you, of everything we were supposed to be building." The air in the studio was thick with unspoken hurts, years of simmering resentments, and the suffocating weight of our shared grief for Max. Just as the silence threatened to become permanent, Robert appeared in the doorway, holding a worn, leather-bound journal. It was one of Max's old songwriting journals, the kind he always carried. "I was going through some of Max's things in the attic," he said, his gaze moving between us, his expression unreadable. "Looking for that old amplifier he said he'd stored. I found this tucked deep inside his main guitar case. It looks like an unsent letter, addressed to both of you." He handed the journal to me. My fingers trembled as I opened it to the bookmarked page. Max's familiar, sprawling handwriting, full of energy and character, filled the page. "To my amazing, infuriating, brilliant sisters, Ava and Chloe," it began. Chloe moved closer, peering over my shoulder, her breath catching. I read aloud, my voice thick with emotion. He wrote about his hopes for Starlight Echo, his unshakable belief in our combined talent. He spoke of his dreams of us taking the music further than he ever could. Then, he addressed us individually. "Ava, my rock, your melodies are the anchors, the soul of our sound. Never lose that clarity, that beautiful precision. But don't let the structure become a cage. Let Chloe's chaos in sometimes. It's where the unexpected magic lives." I glanced at Chloe, whose eyes were shining with unshed tears. "And Chloe, my wildfire," I continued, my voice cracking, "your energy, your fearless experimentation, that's the spark. Don't ever let anyone dull that fire. But remember, even a wildfire needs direction to illuminate, not just consume. Listen to Ava's grounding, it will give your brilliance focus." He wrote about Helios, how he'd spent countless hours modifying it, imagining it as a sonic bridge between my more structured melodic style and Chloe's wilder, more experimental impulses. "It's not just wires and oscillators, girls," he'd written. "It's a conversation. Find the music in each other, even when it's noisy and feels off-key. That's where the real Starlight Echo is. That's where the magic is." Then, a postscript at the bottom made my breath catch in my throat. "P.S. There's a little secret I built into Helios, a hidden compartment in the right side wooden paneling, near the back. Just a small, starter song I wrote for you too, a simple melody and chord progression to build on, to find your way forward together. My hope for your future harmony. Don't let it stay silent for too long." Chloe gasped, a choked sob escaping her. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "A hidden song? From Max? Oh, Ava," she buried her face in her hands. "I sold a piece of his soul. His last gift to us. How could I?" The weight of her words, of Max's unsent hopes, his tangible, musical blessing now lost, settled heavily in the studio. The air crackled with the ghost of his love and our failure. Then, through the fog of my own grief, a tiny, stubborn spark of determination ignited. Max hadn't just left us a memory, he'd left us a map, a reason. "Liam has a lead," I said, my voice surprisingly stronger than I felt. "He called this afternoon. A collector, a guy named Marcus Thorne. He's known for acquiring rare, often unique, vintage synthesizers. He's based upstate, a couple of hours from here. He apparently picked up a Moog fitting Helios's description from an online seller just last week." I looked at Chloe, seeing not just the sister who had betrayed me, but the sister Max had loved, the other half of his musical equation. "We're going to meet him tomorrow morning." The drive upstate was mostly silent, filled with a fragile tension that vibrated like an over-tightened guitar string. Chloe stared out the passenger window, her reflection a pale ghost against the blur of passing trees. I focused on the road, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. What if Marcus refused to sell? What if Helios was already gone, sold on to someone else, untraceable? What if Max's hidden song remained silent forever? Marcus Thorne's studio was less a private collector's den and more a meticulously curated museum of electronic music history. Housed in a converted barn on a sprawling, isolated property, it was filled with rows upon rows of vintage synthesizers, drum machines, sequencers, and obscure sound processors, each one gleaming under soft, strategically placed track lighting. It was awe-inspiring and intimidating. And there, in the center of the main room, positioned like a revered idol on a custom stand, was Helios. It looked almost small amongst the giants of synthesis surrounding it, yet it pulsed with an undeniable presence, its familiar knobs and switches a beacon in the overwhelming sea of technology. My breath caught. It was like seeing a beloved family member after a long, painful separation. Marcus Thorne himself emerged from a side workshop, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He was a stern-faced man in his late 50s, with a penetrating gaze and an air of quiet authority that spoke of a profound, lifelong passion for his craft. He wasn't just a collector. He was a connoisseur, a historian. "Ava and Chloe Hayes," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble. He gestured towards Helios. "I presume you're here about the Moog." "Yes, Mr. Thorne," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. That was our brother's synthesizer, Max Hayes. He passed away 2 years ago and he left it to us. It's the heart of our band, Starlight Echo." Chloe stood beside me, twisting her fingers, her usual effervescence completely extinguished. I sold it, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice barely audible, her gaze fixed on the floor. "Without my sister's permission. It was a terrible, stupid mistake. A betrayal. We're desperate to get it back." Marcus listened patiently, his expression unreadable. He walked slowly around Helios, running a reverent hand over its polished wooden paneling. "Your brother did some truly remarkable custom work on this machine," he said, his eyes examining the unique modifications Max had so lovingly engineered. The expanded modulation matrix, the custom filter bank, quite ingenious. I knew of Max Hayes by reputation. A brilliant local musician, an innovative sound tech. His name still comes up in certain circles. This small acknowledgement of Max's talent, from a man like Marcus Thorne, sent a strange pang of pride and sorrow through me. "We understand you purchased it legally, Mr. Thorne," I said, pressing on, "but it means more to us than just its market value. It's our connection to him, and he apparently left something inside it for us. A piece of music." Marcus was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving from Helios to me, then to Chloe, who finally risked a glance up, her eyes pleading. "I appreciate your honesty," he said at last, "and I respect what your brother created. This instrument is a testament to his skill and artistry." He paused, and my heart hammered against my ribs. "However, I also recognize its unique value, both monetarily and historically. I will not simply give it back." My stomach plummeted. I'd known it wouldn't be easy, but the finality in his tone was crushing. "But," he continued, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, "I will offer you a challenge." Hope, fragile and unexpected, fluttered in my chest. "A challenge? What kind of challenge?" Marcus gestured towards an impressive, state-of-the-art recording console in an adjacent, glass-walled room. "My main studio is at your disposal for the next 48 hours, he declared, his voice resonating with a new intensity. "It has industry-standard equipment, top-of-the-line gear, everything you could possibly need. If, in that time, you can create a new demo, something original, something musically compelling, something that demonstrates not just talent, but also genuine collaborative spirit, that impresses me, then I will sell Helios back to you for exactly what I paid your sister. Not a penny more." His eyes narrowed, his gaze piercing. "If you cannot, then Helios stays here. I assure you it will have a good home, and its music, including whatever your brother may have left within it, will be heard, respected, and preserved." A wave of near despair washed over me. Create something impressive from scratch under this immense pressure, without the familiar comfort and unique sound of Helios itself. It felt impossible. But then Chloe spoke, her voice surprisingly steady, a spark of the old fire, now tempered with a new, unfamiliar focus, igniting in her eyes. "We can do it," she said, looking directly at Marcus, then turning to me with a determined glint. "Those workshops in Ibiza, they weren't a total waste. I actually learned a few things about adapting, about working with different digital audio workstations, new production techniques." She gave a wry, self-deprecating smile. "Turns out, when you're not just trying to party, you can pick up a trick or two." For the next 2 days, Marcus's studio became our crucible. We barely slept, fueled by lukewarm coffee, stale protein bars, and a desperate, shared urgency. The pressure was immense. Old arguments flared, my insistence on structure clashing with Chloe's penchant for chaotic experimentation, but this time, something was different. We listened more. We compromised. Chloe, surprisingly, took the lead in navigating Marcus's complex Pro Tools setup, her recently acquired, albeit ill-gotten, technical knowledge proving invaluable. She'd sketch out a wild, atmospheric soundscape, and I'd find the melodic thread within it, anchoring it with a bass line or a chord progression. We worked, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, not as rivals, but as reluctant, then increasingly engaged collaborators. Ethan, Chloe mentioned briefly during a late-night coffee break, was ancient history. He called a few times after I got back, she'd said with a shrug, fiddling with a synth patch, mostly to complain about how I'd ruined his vibe. He just didn't get why a dusty old synth mattered more than another beach party or a VIP pass. She met my eyes. I get it now, Ava. I really do. This wasn't just about getting Helios back. It was about piecing together something far more broken. On the final afternoon, exhausted, nerves frayed, but with a shared sense of fragile accomplishment, we played our demo for Marcus Thorne. It was a 3-minute instrumental piece, a blend of haunting, ambient textures, intricate rhythms, and a soaring, melancholic melody that seemed to encapsulate all the pain, regret, and tentative hope of the past few weeks. We'd even managed to weave in a subtle, searching motif that felt like an unconscious nod to the idea of Max's hidden song, a yearning for that lost piece of him, a melody seeking its harmony. When the last note faded into the studio's acoustically perfect silence, Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable, his eyes closed. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was it. Then a slow, almost imperceptible smile touched the corners of his lips. He opened his eyes, and they held a warmth that hadn't been there before. "Your brother, Max," he said, his voice softer now, imbued with a surprising gentleness, "would be incredibly proud. Not just of the music, though it is good, very good indeed, raw, honest, and deeply felt." He looked from me to Chloe and back again. "But mostly, he would be proud of you too, of you finding your way back to your harmony, through all the noise." He gestured towards Helios, still standing sentinel in the outer room. "It's yours, go get your brother's song." The relief was so profound, so overwhelming, it almost buckled my knees. Chloe actually swayed, a choked sob escaping her, and for a moment I thought I might have to catch her. Tears pricked my own eyes, tears of exhaustion, of gratitude, of a grief that was finally, slowly, beginning to find its resolution. Back in our own beautifully imperfect, gloriously familiar studio an hour later, Helios restored to its rightful place on Max's stand. We approached it with a reverence that bordered on trepidation. Chloe's fingers, surprisingly steady now, traced the wooden side paneling, searching for the hidden compartment Max had described in his letter. "Here," she whispered, her breath catching. A small, almost invisible seam yielded to gentle pressure, and a tiny, flush-mounted panel clicked open. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded blue velvet, lay a single, hand-scored sheet of music paper, yellowed with age. Max's bold, familiar musical notation filled the staves. It was simple, achingly beautiful, a gentle, lilting melody with a supporting chord progression that was both melancholic and hopeful. It was pure Max, his quiet strength, his enduring optimism, his love for us, all distilled into a few perfectly placed notes. It wasn't just a starter song. It was a key, a map back to the heart of Starlight Echo, back to each other. Tears streamed freely down Chloe's face as she picked it up, her touch feather-light. I felt my own throat tighten, a wave of emotion, love, loss, and an almost unbearable gratitude washing over me. You should take the lead on this one," I said, my voice thick, gesturing towards Helios. "It was his gift to you, to both of us, but you found it." Chloe looked at the sheet music, then at me, her eyes shining with a humility I'd never seen in her before, a stark contrast to the defiant bravado of her Ibiza escapade. "Only if you'll co-produce, Ava," she said softly. "We do this one together, the way he wanted." The months that followed were a slow, careful reconstruction, not just of our music, but of our fractured sisterhood. We worked on Max's hidden song, which we simply called Helios's theme, letting its gentle melody be our guide. Chloe, true to her word, attended every business management and financial counseling session with a focus and seriousness that surprised me. She started taking a genuine interest in the less glamorous side of being in a band: budgeting, promotion, contract negotiation, things she'd previously dismissed as Ava's boring stuff. I, in turn, learned to loosen my grip, to trust her creative instincts more, to embrace some of her chaos. We found a new rhythm, a new way of working that honored both Max's structured artistry and Chloe's intuitive fire. Our sound evolved, becoming richer, deeper, layered with the complexities of our shared and separate experiences, our individual pain, and our collective healing. Nova Records, impressed by our honesty about the initial delay, and even more so by the new, incredibly raw and powerful demos we eventually submitted, which included a haunting rendition of Helios's theme, offered us a revised development deal. Our showcase was booked for a crisp evening in late October. As we stood backstage at the Mercury Lounge, the low thrum of an expectant crowd audible through the heavy velvet curtains, Chloe turned to me. She looked different tonight. Her magenta streaks had faded to a softer rose, her usual flamboyant stage attire replaced by a simple black dress, her eyes clear and focused. "Thanks, Ava," she said, her voice sincere, almost quiet despite the pre-show adrenaline buzzing in the air. For not giving up on the music, or on me, after everything." I managed a small, genuine smile. The anger was long gone, replaced by a complex tapestry of emotions: forgiveness, a cautious trust, and a deep, resilient love. Max always said our biggest hits would be the ones we wrote together, the ones that came from both our hearts, I said, nudging her shoulder gently. He believed in us, even when we didn't believe in ourselves or each other. I took a deep breath, the familiar scent of old venue, stale beer, and electric anticipation filling my lungs. Ready to prove him right? She grinned then, a flash of the old, irrepressible Chloe, now tempered with a newfound maturity, a hard-won wisdom. "Let's make some noise," she said, her eyes shining with a fierce, bright light. "Let's make him proud." Together, we walked onto the stage, into the warm wash of the lights, Helios gleaming beside my keyboard, ready to sing once more. The silence of the studio felt a lifetime away. Tonight, there would only be music.